And welcome to the Barry Foster Show, coming to you from the Ridge Floor Studios in the city of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. As always, if you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for us, topics you'd like us to talk about, or people you'd like us to interview, just put them in the comments below. Or you can send them to thebarryfostershow@gmail.com. I want to remind you that Ridge Florist is ready, willing, and able to help you get ready for your New Year's Eve party. If you're having a big party, you don't have your decor ready yet, give them a call, 863-385-4477, or go to ridgefloristofsebring.com, or stop on by their studios down there at 111 Memorial Drive, just up from the intersection of Memorial and the Sebring Parkway. They can help you with everything from table arrangements to wreaths to indoor bunting to anything you want. They've been doing it almost 7 decades now. Nell and Steve started the place back in 1963. And we really, really appreciate Ridge Florist being the initial and major sponsor of the Barry Foster Show. On the phone again, coming to us from beautiful Pennsylvania, we have John Larsen, who has not frozen himself to death yet.
Good morning. No, sir, we haven't done that yet. We've survived, and it's really been, I would have to say, of the many, many, many winters that I've spent in this area, it's really been kind of mild. Only one really cold day. Yesterday was a little bit hairy because they had freezing rain here about 11 o'clock in the morning, and it created some issues on the roadways, to say the least, and whatnot. But other than that, I would say weather-wise, it's okay.
Yeah, it's going up from the teens to like the 30s. So, I mean, it must feel like a heat wave practically.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, because every other time when you go out, you have to bundle up, and that's the thing, you have to put on clothing, for the, long shirt, long pants, another coat on top of that, and so on and so forth, and a hat on top of your head. So, yes, but overall, so far, not too bad.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure the lake here, Lake Erie, hasn't frozen over yet. It has a little bit, but not very much. And what happens is the cold air coming across from Canada blows across that lake. And here, where my daughter lives, they are the proverbial dumping ground for a lot of snow. And so when it comes, until the lake freezes over, you're going to continue to get that. And sometimes the lake freezes over, sometimes it does not.
It doesn't totally freeze over, because I remember when I was a kid, there were these 2 young men who they were going to walk across Lake Erie, and they started up in Cleveland. It was frozen over, and they walked down on the lake, and they were never heard from again. And they said that it may freeze around the edges, but it does not freeze in the middle. So they probably went through the ice, and that was it for them. So you're right. You get that, what they call the lake effect snow, where about 20 miles in, and we used to get that every winter, we would get like 2 feet of snow in a dumping. I think the biggest we got was back in 74, and we got like 3 or 4 feet. And my Camaro was just a little lump in the snow. It was just a little rise in the snow. I said, that's where my Camaro is. It was really buried. So you haven't had any big snows yet, but you had cold weather anyway.
No, there was some snow here. I think a day or 2 before I got here, they had like 14 inches of snow. So they had quite a bit on that particular day. But since I've been here, there's been the first day I was here, it snowed some. But then it hasn't really snowed hardly at all. But like I said, yesterday was freezing rain, and we're not very far from I-79. Matter of fact, we're really close. And if you had a good arm, you could hit it with a rock and whatnot. And they had a major multi-car pileup right after, about noontime yesterday, because the freezing rain started at 11 yesterday morning. And a lot of people either were traveling too fast, or, the roads were very treacherous, and maybe people didn't slow down. I don't know what caused it, but it was a multi-car pileup to the point where they had to shut down part of I-79 to clear the cars off of the road, and so on. So that was kind of a hairy situation. We were out yesterday morning, but we got home. I would say we got home right about 11:45 or so. So we managed to get ahead of it before it really started freezing rain.
Well, that's good. I grew up in that, and in the winter, cars don't stop as quickly as they do in the summertime. It's amazing. You slide a little bit. You have to kind of take that in and pump the brakes. But John, that we're heading into New Year's week. New Year's Day is going to come up on Thursday, and I thought maybe we kind of take a look back at some of the things that have happened since last January, and the biggest thing that happened last January was Donald Trump was inaugurated into office, and things began to change immediately. And I think probably, maybe you'll agree with me, but I think the biggest thing that after Donald Trump took the oath of office, the borders were sealed.
Yeah, that, I was watching a little segment this morning on Newsmax, and they had like 4 or 5 panelists on there, and they asked them all, what is your top story for 2025? And a couple of them said, well, it has to be the closing of the border because, number one, the massive influx of 15, 20 million, whatever that final number is, but it's massive and has plunged this country into all sorts of financial and criminal activity and financial draining and so on. So, it's a very, very good thing. I mean, that was the thing that had to happen. It's like the hole in the dike, and you have to stop that hole in the dike in order to prevent water from flooding in. Well, the illegals were flooding in, and I think within a matter of, I would say, probably 2 or 3 months, Trump pretty well had that under control, and that's an amazing feat as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, he got it. He got the bleeding stopped. He got it down to 0. And then the deportations began. Not only ICE, and ICE continues, they were working on Christmas Eve. I mean, they continue to find illegals and deport them. But there's also, I think, been a pretty healthy self-deportation, because I think the program still is in effect. If you want to leave, they'll give you $1,000 and a plane ticket back to wherever you want to go. You're not going to get dumped in Somalia or Uruguay or someplace you don't know. They'll send you back to where you want to go with $1,000 American dollars in your pocket. So I don't know what the actual numbers are, but we're into at least 4 or 5 million, I think, deportations, both self and government sponsored deportations.
Well, Trump announced early this week, for this week and through the end of this year, he announced that they will pay $3,000 and a plane ticket back to where you want to go. So they upped the ante to try and get the last minute, if you will, end of the year exit of as many illegals as possible by self-deporting. So for every person that self-deports, it's between now and the end of the year, it's $3,000 and a plane ticket back to where you want to go.
So I think he wants to get for the end of the year, for his end of 2025, he wants to get the numbers up, and yes, that'll help. And yes, in the long run, people say, well, you're paying them to leave. Yes, because in the long run, $3,000 is a drop in the bucket, considering the previous administration was putting them up in 4-star hotels. I mean, and paying all their room and board. So, I mean, $3,000 is virtually nothing to get them out and get them gone. And it begins to help spur the economy, because as they leave, more jobs open up, and it makes more economic sense for Americans to go back to work.
Well, if I talked to you before the show started about a segment that I was watching on Victor Davis Hanson just now this morning between him and one of the other people that's on with him, Jack Bauer. And he was citing a report that was put out just, I think, the other day. And this program was taped on the 22nd. So say it was around the 20th, 21st in that area, about how much government money is being spent on all welfare programs. Right now, it is north of like $1.3, $1.5 trillion a year. And he gave a subset of that. He said, if you take a family of a mother and father or husband and wife, 2 children, and let's say they only work part-time. Okay. Why? I don't know. Part-time. And they make $11,000 a year. By the time they take all of the welfare programs they're entitled to, they're going to be close to $65,000 a year. And that's all paid by the taxpayers or by printed money from the government, one or the other.
Well, what a disincentive to work. I mean, if you're, and I understand why they're working part time, and this happened under the Obama administration, where businesses found out if you hire people part time, you don't have to pay the benefits. You know, you don't have to pay any benefits for them if they're just part time workers. So they started hiring more people part time. And there's a large big box store that started a program that they would hire you almost immediately at a good wage if you were a veteran. Why? Because as a veteran, you already have health care. You already have some of these benefits they don't have to pay, and it makes them look good. Oh, look at them. They're going out and hiring veterans. How patriotic are they? Well, maybe, but maybe they know that they're not going to have to pay for a lot of stuff that they normally would have to pay for with regular human beings. So, yeah, it's a huge disincentive to work. And I think, you know, to dig this out, it's part of DOGE. This digging in to what we've been paying for this, that, and the other, and welfare is one of them. DOGE going into, I think that was one of the big stories of 2025. It's given a whole new look to government. Government now, they've got all kinds of committees going in trying to figure out where there's been waste, fraud, and abuse. And you and I have talked about this for decades, John, that the welfare system is a hotbed of waste, fraud, and abuse.
Well, I think what's really brought that to light in a massive way is the fraud that's taking place in Minnesota. I mean, now they're talking 8-10 billion dollars of waste, and that's only what they've uncovered. I mean, now they're uncovering more programs in Minnesota that are being abused primarily by the Somali population of that state and so on. Even though they don't want you to say that, that's in fact true, and so on. So, I mean, we had no, and what gets me though, with all of this going on, and maybe some people have raised their voice and tried to bring it up in the DC government, if you will, but there was obviously very little or nothing done to identify and stop and arrest these criminals that have been stealing hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars from the American public, and in places like Minnesota, where I believe all of the people out there in the government positions, the governor and everybody else, are complicit in what took place. And I think they're as guilty as the people that actually took the stuff.
Oh yeah, there are groups of people who find that they can get in and use the American system against us, and you only have to look at where the hackers are coming from to get into people's. I have two dear friends who've had hackers get into their bank accounts and clean them out of everything they had. One was a lady who didn't have that much, and she sure didn't have anything to lose, and she lost it all. Another guy was he's a missionary, and he spends a lot of money, and he takes in a lot of money, and he lost a lot of money, and the Lord has helped him get back on his feet. But there are certain groups, the hackers. The hackers weren't from Sheboygan, John. They were from outside the United States. And the Somalis apparently have found themselves a cash cow in the United States. I just saw a citizen journalist who made it his business to go to all of the daycare centers. They had published a list of the daycare centers that were getting money. And every time they showed up at a daycare center, there were no children. They'd gotten millions of dollars. One got $1 million and change. The other one got $2 million and change for taking care of all these children. They showed up. There were some Somalian people there, but there were no children. And it's taking these citizen journalists going in to find this kind of thing. But I think, as you say, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, it is, and I think and there's no doubt. If now, I did see that the so-called one of the welfare programs in the state of Maine, which also has for the population a large percentage of Somalis in the state of Maine, Portland, Maine, and a couple other locations. And I mean, what they did, they had to shut it down. I don't know if it was the food stamp program or which one, but it was in the state of Maine over $1 million of fraud was perpetrated by the Somalis in the state of Maine. So, and I know there's a large population in Ohio. There's a large population of Somalis, and Somalis are in about 6 or 8 of the states in this country, and any significant numbers. And I'm talking a few thousand up to I think it's 90 or 95,000 that are in the state of Minnesota. But I mean, there's no doubt. If you're I get a kick. You watch the mayor of Minneapolis. He'll sit there and he'll speak Somali, and then he cries and boo-hoos. And they had a number of other officials. As chief of police, he does the same thing in Minneapolis. And yet, how can you tell me that these people came to this country with supposedly nothing, and now a couple years later, you see them buying these multi-$100,000 houses, driving BMWs and Mercedes Benz and that, and not get suspicious as to where did all this money come from?
Well, we had
that's the frustration.
Had that TSA whistleblower talking about these Somali couriers with suitcases full of cash. They took the cash, they dug around in the cash, made sure that was the only thing in there. But they were, and I don't know about you, but how many stacks of hundreds can you put in a suitcase? That's probably a good size amount of money. You're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know, we should try a little experiment. See how much money we can cram into a suitcase. And you know, the interesting thing is, I thought that if you took out more than $10,000 out of the United States, that you were up for investigation. Apparently, either they investigated them and didn't do anything, or didn't investigate them.
Yes, and I know I've watched a few of those. There's some programs on that. What they do, they have people and do the filming at these ports of entry, where they look in people's luggage to find out if they're bringing in illegal drugs or other kinds of stuff, including money. And I've seen many times where people have tried to bring money from their country into the United States, and it's well above the $10,000. And these people either are ignorant and didn't know, or were trying to get away with it, but they were stopped, and they had to pay a big fine for trying to bring any amount of money over $10,000 into the country.
Well, other thing is that I am waiting with bated breath to see what happens to Ilhan Omar, who is the congressional person from I think Hennepin County, which is Minneapolis. From her, also to find out Keith Ellison, the Attorney General, and of course Governor Tim Walz, who's doubled down and has doubled down about being in support of the Somalis. Even in light of all these bad things. And he hasn't even said, oh, well, there's some bad apples, and we condemn the bad apples, but in general, the small, he doesn't even do that. So I'm going to wait and see, are there any kind of charges being preferred against any of these people or others that we're going to see begin to go to jail for some of this?
Well, I know they've already arrested, I think it's upwards of 75 to 80 of the, if you will, the so-called Somalis in the community that were the ringleaders of what took place. Now, that's the actual people themselves that have been, they said they were feeding the futures, which was supposed to be feeding children that couldn't afford food, or the family couldn't afford food. They were supposed to be making 6,000 meals a day. Well, the place they were doing it at, it couldn't handle more than a couple hundred, and weren't even doing that. And so that was one of the many, many programs. Every time I turn around, it seems like they've discovered another welfare type program that they have, just raped away with money, just took the money and did whatever with it, spent it, sent it back to Somalia, whatever, and so on. So there's been so many fraud cases out there. It's going to take a while to try and find out how these links from point A to point B, point C, and identify all the people that were involved. But you're right. Supposedly, it's been reported even by a number of what people that I would call are informed are saying that she's now upwards of worth over 10 or $12 million, and maybe more than that. So how did she manage to find that much money in this country on a salary of, what do they get, like $140,000, $150,000 a year, and so on? So you're right. She's absolutely, I think, on the list of those that, if not investigated, arrested, possibly even deported and gotten out of Congress. I did see she was on a National Intelligence Committee, I believe, And I did see that they have taken her off of that committee.
Oh, is that right? Well,
Yes.
that's good. And I'll tell you, we're getting back to DOGE. They really their uncovering of the things that were going on with U.S. aid, I think, is probably one of the big stories and the underreported stories of 2025, because in shutting down those programs, it appears the bulk of which were at best sketchy, has really put a hurt on a funding that has gone back to the Democrat Party and apparently some legislators that since they shut that program down and shut the taxpayers' dollars from going into that program, there's been a lot of other funds that you wouldn't really normally think about that have dried up. So, and I'm waiting for Kash Patel to begin, or whoever, to begin to kind of connect the dots and say, this is where the money was going. I mean, they've shut it off, but then we haven't heard much about the subsequent investigations.
No, and I think and this is, and I know and I get frustrated like everybody, but I imagine that when you are trying to trace the links of money and how it's funneled from here to here to here to here through this organization, that individual, and so on, it takes a lot of digging and time in order to unearth all the details. And you need to have that before you go to court and try to, have somebody arrested and then, go to trial and get sentenced and put in jail. But I mean, it takes time to do that. So I'm frustrated. I want them to arrest all these people yesterday, but I also try to understand that the investigatory time that's needed to uncover all of this it's not like trying to track down a murderer where maybe you're looking for one person. Here, you may be looking at hundreds of people and organizations that are funneling money in different directions. And it takes a lot of time and people and man hours in order to trace this money and find out, and then get the evidence that you feel you got a good case. You can go to court and you're going to win, because you don't want to go to court thinking, well, maybe I'll win, maybe I'll lose. No, you got to go in there thinking you're going to win, and this person's going to be found guilty.
And part of the problem, I think, too, John, is there are people who have left the country and have disappeared and no longer can be found, and they may or may not be getting a lot of cooperation from the governments of countries where these people may have gone. And there may have been some people who are tragically died in car crashes or heart attacks or muggings gone wrong. I don't know. People that might have been key witnesses who no longer are around to give their testimony. We understand the FBI is more than busy with many of the things that have been going on, and I think they lost a great guy when they lost Dan Bongino. But at any rate, I think that there are a number of things, and there's still some people in there, I think, that want to protect themselves from things that happened in the past administration. There's a lot of questions that are going on about why this wasn't investigated. The Code Pink, when they disrupted Donald Trump's speech, they're trying to find out, and why the FBI didn't investigate it. I think some of those people are still in there, and I don't think that they're not working as hard as some of the other people that may be in there now.
No, but the one thing that I'm taking a lot of solace in, and that is the Democratic Party. Let's face it, I don't care what anybody says. The Democratic Party has been getting money funneled to them by all kinds of foreign aid money and so on. For instance, there was just a story out yesterday, and I believe this to be true. They now have determined that the senator from South, Lindsey Graham, has received money from the military complex that was supplying ammunition and armaments to Ukraine. And the story said that he's one of many in the Senate that have had their fingers in the pie on that money, and that kind of money that's going into so-called foreign aid, but primarily into Ukraine-Russian war.
He's got an R after his name, and I will tell you that I don't think that there is not necessarily a political party that is exclusively doing this. I think that there are guys and gals on both sides of the aisle that have been doing this, and they need to be held accountable. And
Yes.
Nancy Pelosi and some of the things that have happened with her. There was a kid who tracked all of her stock tradings, and whatever she bought, he would buy, and whatever she sold, he would sell. And he offered to put other people on this program because she had done so much better than any of the investment firms. I mean, she had been spectacular in her ability to pick the kinds of investments to make. So, I mean, I think that there are people who really need to be held to account, and for Donald Trump, the clock's ticking, especially in light of what's going to happen this coming November.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's going to be interesting. But I believe that with the money dried up from some of the, funneling organizations like USAID, I think was a huge, huge funneling organization to make sure that money got back from foreign aid back to the Democratic Party. And I think now that hopefully they've got the clamps on that to where that cannot happen again, at least during the Trump administration. All right. All of these spigots, let's face it, all of these spigots that have been turned off, even if temporarily right now by the Trump administration, will be immediately turned back on if the Democrats take control.
Oh, yes.
Immediately. Yes. And so this all, unfortunately, could be short-lived unless they're able to identify, arrest, take to trial, and find guilty to where they can put some of these people into prison and maybe, just maybe, send a message to some of those that have been stealing from the American people forever and ever and ever.
Another thing that happened right after the Trump inauguration in January the 20th was his drill baby drill. And it's taken a while. It's taken a while for that to take effect. Unlike the previous administration, when they canceled the pipeline, the gas prices spiked immediately. Now the gas prices have been steadily coming down to where some places there's a place in Texas where they had it for $1.99 a gallon, below $2 a gallon. I think most of the states are at least around $2, if not less. I know a lot of this is driven by gas taxes, and up in Pennsylvania, they have a pretty stout gas tax up there.
Oh yes, yeah, second only to California, and whatnot. And I, just as a side note, but if you see what's going on with the latest two refineries that are shutting down, one at the end of this year, this week, as a matter of fact, and then one shortly thereafter in California, they're now going to be down to where they're going to have to import most of their oil and gas, if you will, from outside the country, which means they're going to pay a huge premium for it. And the delivery of that is always going to be suspect depending on what's going on in the international waters, because that's the only way it's going to be transported. So, I mean, there's a real problem. And they're saying now, from watching a number of the podcasters that cover that kind of information, that gas prices in California easily could go, $6 to $8 a gallon next year.
Well, they've wanted to do that to push the electric vehicles, and
absolutely.
I get
absolutely.
that. I'm just at sea as to why some of these red states like Texas, Louisiana, Florida don't make some more gas refineries to help work on the supply of oil. I know that President Trump, for the second time, has been filling the strategic reserve back up at lower prices. And in fact, they seized I think two now, Venezuelan oil tankers, and they asked the president what they were going to do with the oil. He says, well, we're going to keep it. And he said, well, what are you going to do with it? He says, I think we're going to use it for the strategic reserves. So they, in trying to put the pressure on Venezuela, they're going to keep that for the strategic reserves. But I think that the lowering of gas prices is one of the things that is driving down inflation. Inflation is not where we want it yet, and it's going to take a while, especially with the $22 or the $20 or $15 an hour minimum wage that they put in. It's going to take a while to drive the inflation down. But that is another thing I think this year that we have seen, and it's just stuff that's not covered on the mainstream media. And it's you and me. It's Victor Davis Hanson. It's the podcasters that are bringing this out, so people have an understanding that although it's not a lot better, it's certainly not any worse than it was.
Well, you speak of that. I saw watched the segment the other day, and they were saying that the three big networks, if you will, ABC, NBC, and CBS, only one of those three had one segment that talked about the corruption going on in Minneapolis and in Minnesota. Only one. The other two, not one story on the corruption going on out there. And so this is how they try to cover it. And this is where, and I've asked myself this for many, many years, but I finally got it. The light went off, and I understand now how these states do what they do. But I mean, can you imagine if you're a low information person watching just CBS or NBC and they don't cover one word of what's going on in Minneapolis, you have no idea the corruption that's taking place out there. And so this is how they do it and whatnot. It's very frustrating, but a lot of people, and I know some personally, okay, that just shake their head and say, oh, none of that's real. None of it's real. No, everything is Trump's fault. Everything. Well, no matter what it is.
And I think that's, we're going to talk about this probably tomorrow, but when I'm doing a kind of a retrospective today, and then on our next program as we head into the new year, I want to talk about things we want to accomplish for the new year. But I think one thing is that we're going to have to redouble our efforts to get people to turn off the television and to begin to go to podcasters and to begin to turn to the internet to find out information. And, one thing, when I go through my social media feed, I see a story and I look at the story. And so then I go in and I start looking for, news stories about it to see if it's real or not. And I go through three different search engines looking for stories. And when I get to the third one, if I can't find anything, I go back to my social media and say, I can't find corroboration for this story. It's going to require us, when you see something, to go and make sure that it's correct. Because some of the stories you really want to be right, and they're not. Some of these stories you really don't want to be right, and they're also not. But you've got to begin to do your own due diligence. And, I mean, people I don't think understand the effects of drill baby drill, although here in Highlands County, the lowest we've seen is 2 and 39. It's jumped back up, but it's trickled back down again. 2 and 53 is the lowest that you'll find it here. But you're seeing the effects of what Donald Trump has done in terms of gas prices. You've seen the prices in the grocery stores have stopped their spike. They're not going up as high. And I don't think people understand that in some cases the food is actually now going to be not as bad for you as it was before. Not a lot of people read the ingredient lists, And I'll tell you, I'll do a little shout out here, is that there are these corn chips my wife likes, and they're called Xochitl, but they're Xochitl. I call them Xochitl, but that's not the way you pronounce it. But she got some for Independence Day, and they were red, white, and blue. And the blue were blue corn, and the white were regular corn, and some were dyed red. And I looked at it, and they were dyed with red dye number 40. So I sent him an email, and I said, you're telling us how pure your chips are and everything, but you're using a petroleum-based dye. And I got a nice little email back and said, thank you, and we pay attention to our consumers. But this was said, the FDA said this was okay. Well, so now it's the Christmas time, so she got some Christmas chips, all right? And some were white, the regular corn. Some were dyed green, and some were dyed red, so they were red, white, and green. And I looked at, and they had switched to vegetable oil, to vegetable juice coloring to get them changed. And they'd eliminated the red dye number 40. And on Monday, or later today, I'm going to send them an email thanking them. So some of these people, some of this that RFK Jr. has done has really made the food not as bad for you as it was before, as he's kind of leaned on these companies to get some of this stuff out of it. So the prices are going down, and the food is getting incrementally better for you.
Oh, I think it is. And again, that kind of thing takes time because number one, you have to have the data that supports your argument that this dye is hazardous to your health. Okay, now once you've got the data that says that and you can prove that, then it's a matter of going back to the suppliers and say, okay, we want you to eliminate this. All right, I can do that, but it's going to take me 90 days in order to get that out of my system. In other words, take care of the inventory I've got, get blah, 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 do all of those things. So it's going to be 90 days before I can make that happen. Okay, and if they come to an agreement on that 90-day period, then fine. It's going to be 90 days. It'll be replaced by something that's better for the American people to ingest and so on. So I think it's, again, all of these things that have been going on for God knows ever, we just can't, it's not like a light switch where you can turn it on and off in milliseconds. No, this is going to take a little while to make that happen. And I think it's happening, but everybody wanted it to happen in the first, 100 days of Trump's administration. It was impossible. But I think they've made really good headway on a lot of things. You're right. The price of oil, price of gas has come down dramatically from where it was. And so on. I went with my daughter 2 days ago. She went up to Ohio because they live within about 15 miles of Ohio here. And Ohio is always cheaper. She went up there and she got gas for $2.73. And here it was $3.29.
Oh, nicely done.
So, I mean, and they do that regularly just because of their location and the fact that it's so much cheaper over there. And, when you start talking 30, 40, 50 cents a gallon and you need 10 gallons, you're talking about a $5 bill. So, I mean, that is, that's incentive for people to do that. But I think overall, the price is even here, just in, I think, the last 2 days, they lowered the price from $3.29 to $3.15. I filled up the car that I rented. I filled it up yesterday at $3.15. So I think that was, that was a good move. Now, how long that'll last, I don't know. But, those things are happening. But I think Trump, unfortunately, there's so many things that Trump is trying to do in his administration, so many things that the Biden administration literally just ruined this country with, and so on. And they've made really good headway and progress with it. He just needs to keep emphasizing that to the American people. This is where we were. This is where we are today. And this is what we're going to do to make it even better tomorrow. And I think as long as you do that, I think that the American people are going to have some trust in what you're trying to make accomplish.
He's, I think, done about everything he can do with executive orders, and he apparently has been very successful in undoing previous executive orders that were signed with the auto pen. That they are now null and void because they were signed with an auto pen. And the next thing is to see if they can do the same thing with bills that were passed by Congress. If those were signed with an auto pen, and apparently the previous administration, the president who served under the previous administration, is, I don't think, at a point where you can talk to him about what he remembers or doesn't remember. So it may be, they may have to go in and say, he doesn't remember signing this legislation. So if it is signed by the auto pen, is that legislation null and void? And Donald Trump is continuing, even though this is pushing the rope uphill, getting more judges approved, and he can get more judges. I mean, the Supreme Court just came and said, no, you can't have some district court someplace and have a ruling that affects the entire United States. That's not happening anymore. So little by little, he's getting to the point where he can get things done and not have them undone by some small district court judge that they've dug up in Georgia or Minnesota or some other state. So he's being able to do this stuff, and they got the big, beautiful bill passed. The next piece of legislation, they're going to have to really work in this legislative session to get things done before the upcoming midterms. Although I I have high hopes for the midterms because I think things are getting incrementally better all the time due to many things. And so the Americans are not going to, Americans as a whole aren't going to want to see things change very much.
Well, the next big thing on the horizon is the end of January. Is going to be the continuing resolution is going to be expired. So the Democrats are definitely going to shut the government down again the end of January, going into February, and we'll see what the outcome is going to be of that. I believe they suffered, if you will, on the so-called American people's minds when they shut the government down the last time.
The Schumer shutdown.
I think they're going to shut. Yes, they're going to shut it down again. And this time, I think they're going to dig their heels in even more than they did the last time. We'll see if they're able to do that, and we'll see if they're the ones that ultimately are going to get the so-called blame for shutting the government down again. Because every time it shuts the government down, no matter how long it's down and so on, that's another struggle that Trump has to fight in order to try and get the economy back rolling again.
Well, I think that he's done some things that will help in terms of the tariffs that he's enacted, and he's used the tariffs not only to even the playing field for American goods. Okay, there's that argument, but he has also used the tariffs to get other things accomplished. For instance, there are seven peace deals that he used economic leverage to get things done, and most people don't know that these even occurred because, as you pointed out, the mainstream media doesn't cover these. But he cut deals with Serbia and Kosovo, with Egypt and Ethiopia, with Cambodia and Thailand, with India and Pakistan, the Congo and Rwanda, Armenia and Azerbaijan. Many people probably have heard of the Israel-Iran peace accord that they made, but he has used those kinds of economic hammers to try to get these things accomplished, and it's made it's made goods cost a little bit more. Okay, but on the other side, it's provided jobs. It's provided an economic stimulus for us to begin to make things here. And we've just seen RFK talking about how Americans now are getting into making our own pharmaceuticals again. He's really changing the landscape, and I don't think the price, the benefits, I think, outweigh the prices that we've been paying.
Oh, there's no doubt that they've made progress, and they really, from all of his so-called economic people that he's got in his cabinet, they all are predicting to the person, including Trump himself, that 26 is going to be the year when a lot of the things they put into place in 25 will kick in and be activated come 26. And they really feel like the economy is going to really get a spark. Now, how that's going to equate into lowering prices, I don't have the answers to that yet at this point. I'm sure they do. But, getting the prices down in the grocery store, like we've talked about before, is going to be the key item. Because let's face it, when they say, well, we reduce your taxes, 50% of the people pay no taxes. So it doesn't impact those people at all. Okay. But the people that do pay taxes, if they start seeing that, the tax decrease, they were saying yesterday, I saw it, said that some people are going to see like $5,000 or $6,000 more in income because of the bill that they passed last year, the economic bill. Well, if that's true, that's a huge chunk of money coming into people, without having to get another job to get that money. It just is going to be because of the tax reductions that are going to take place in 26.
Well, see, John, one thing you said really falls to us and it falls to all our listeners out there, and which is this. You said 50% of the people out there don't pay any taxes. I would submit to you that 50% of the people out there don't see the taxes that they pay. And it's going to be up to us. They say, well, I don't pay taxes. Oh, yes, you do. You pay a lot of taxes that you don't see, and you'll see this look of consternation. I've told this story about me talking with a former coworker about this, about how they didn't care about the property taxes here in Highlands County because they didn't pay property taxes. And I assured her that not only did she pay property taxes, but she probably paid as much or more than I do. And the look on her face when I explained, I asked her, well, does the landlord ever give you anything? No, he never gives us anything. I said, really? I said, so when the property taxes goes up, who do you think pays that? Him or you? And she looked at me and the light bulb came on. And I said, yeah, when your rent goes up, it's not the greedy landlord, okay? You're paying his property taxes for that house that you have the privilege of living in. I said, and he doesn't get a homestead exemption on that property. I get a homestead exemption on mine. So I'm paying at that time $25,000 a year less. Okay, so my house is probably nicer than yours, and I am probably paying fewer property taxes than you're paying. And I said, and that's just the beginning of hidden taxes that you don't see. You paying taxes on groceries. Oh, no, I don't pay taxes on groceries. Sure you do. Sure you do. I said, who do you think, for the box factory, do you think the box factory for your cereal pays taxes? You think the farmer pays taxes? You think the farmer pays taxes on the fertilizer he pays on the wheat to grow your cereal? And you think the cereal company pays taxes? I said, and who do you think pays those taxes? Oh, well, what do you think goes into the cost of that box of cereal you're pulling off the shelf? And she looked at me.
Well,
and said,
that's a big part of it. But I think the other thing that what I was referring to is income taxes.
Right. But I mean,
50% of people pay zero income taxes. Those that are working pay income taxes.
And some people get rebates who never even worked.
Right. And I think it's 26 when the no tax on tips and no tax on overtime kicks in.
And
so
Social
that's
Security.
another thing that's going to impact people that are working, waitresses and other people that survive on tips, if you will. And then those people that they're in a job where they get a fair amount of overtime won't have to pay income tax on those two things, which for a large part of the segment of the population, that's almost like free money coming in. You're still doing the same job you were doing yesterday, except you're going to get more coming to you rather than going to the government.
Yeah, and this is going to be something that we're going to have to do some educating on, John. And I know that there's people. It's all Trump's fault, and they have TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, and that's okay. Some people you're not going to be able to convince, but some people you're going to have to just drop a rock in the water and say, go take a look at this, because you are paying a lot of taxes. You may not see them, okay? Now, you're not paying income taxes the way we're paying income taxes, but that's a small drop in the bucket of the taxes that you're paying, because when you go to as we talked about earlier, you go to the gas station, take a little look and see how much of that is taxes that you're paying for your gallon of gasoline. Understand this. Understand that you're paying a lot of taxes at the store. You go to the dry goods store, pick your Home Depot, Walmart, whatever store you're going to. You're paying for their property taxes. You're paying for their employees' taxes. You're paying for a lot of this stuff. You're paying, and so you may not be paying any direct taxes. You don't have to write a check out to the government every year. But you're paying taxes, and understand that the fewer taxes that people pay, the lower the prices you're going to have to pay. And
absolutely.
It's going to have to be an education process for us.
Yes, and I'll tell you how I've seen it a couple times, and it's not, some of it is taxes, but other things. Buying an airplane ticket. A lot of airlines will advertise a low fare. Let's say they advertise $109 for your trip, okay? By the time you get done with all the add-ons, you're $300, $400, $500. The same thing with a rental car, because I've had a rental car. By the time you get the rental car, but then they start adding in a tax for this, a tax for that, an add-on for that, an add-on for this, and it doubles or triples or quadruples the initial actual cost of what it was you were doing. Okay, yes. So yes, and that's where if you don't look at it's like the down ballot on an election, okay? Everybody sees the name of let's say it's a presidential election. They see that name. but most people couldn't even tell you who they're voting for in a down ballot people, because they just don't do any investigating of that particular person or that particular office that people are running for. So, I mean, it's just, again, a large part of it is, you're right. People have to put in some effort to really understand what's going on, whether it pertains to taxes or whatever. If you don't look at things, read things, investigate some things, and question some things, if you take it verbatim, you're going to think, well, everything is beautiful. Everything is fine. I have no problem in my world.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you have no problem in my world, because, you don't realize what's taking place. And so this people vote on emotion, all right, rather than actual facts and figures and data pertaining to the candidates that are running. And that's where a large part of people are in office time after time after time that do nothing for that job. Nothing.
Yeah, so you're exactly right, because there's an event coming up next year for which I had to rent a motorhome, okay? And they gave me a price, and so I said, okay, this much, okay. And I said, how much is that out the door? And they said, what do you mean? I said, at the bottom of my bill, how much is this going to cost me in total? Not is this the same number? This something $99 you quoted me? Oh, whoa, no. I said, all right, tax, title, everything out the door. How much is that? And on many occasions when we order something, I have to ask that question. What's my bottom line on this? Because you're right, they add this tax, luxury tax, carpet tax, whatever, whatever kind of tax, thumb tax, whatever tax they want to add on. So yeah, you have to ask what it is out the door to find out what it's going to be, because if you're going to pay the tax, they're not going to pay the tax. You're going to pay the tax on it.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, it's passed on, and that has to be the way it works. I mean, you have to have that. Otherwise, let's say that the taxes on rental property and the landlord didn't pass any of that on. Well, eventually he's going to be losing money. He or she's going to be losing money,
right? Because
they're covering all the things that they had a right to pass on to you. You may not like it. You may not like your rent going from $1,000 a month to $1,200 a month, but that extra $200, like for instance, right there in Highlands County, people that are on the Sun and Lake water sewer system, like I am, okay, we were all charged. They're building a new sewer plant in Sun and Lake. All of us are assessed, I think it was, if I want to say it was like $1,500 or $2,500. Everybody that lives in that system has to pay that amount of money. Now, you don't have to pay it all at once. You can pay it off monthly for the next 7 years, okay? But you have to pay it. Otherwise, you don't have any water or sewer. So those are the kind of things that get passed on to people, because that's the only way the system is going to work. I don't like it. Nobody likes it. But if they, in fact, said, I've got to have a new sewer plant because the one we have is outdated and no longer handles what's going into it, all right, I understand it. It's like a car. Eventually, the car breaks down, repairs. You get to a point where I've got to buy a different car because this one is costing me an arm and a leg.
Yeah, you got to make a decision. Do you want to spend your money on maintenance, or do you want to spend your money on repairs? That's
right.
Those
absolutely.
And we kind of look back at 2025, and I think since January 20th, it has been probably about as good as it's going to be. And next time we're going to look forward to 2026. And the one thing that I would tell people right now is it's going to be a great celebration because it's the 250th anniversary of the United States. But also, I would say if you are getting extra money from no tax on tips or no tax on Social Security, I would begin to prepare, because, as you pointed out, it appears that they will try to shut the government down, and we need to be ready for that. We need to take our 7 years of plenty and our 7 months of plenty, put back, be ready for when things begin to slow down and stop. You will be ready for that to happen, and it will not affect you as much as it would if you weren't ready.
Right. Absolutely. I think, and we've got about approximately a month before that's going to take place. It's absolutely certain, I think, that it's going to take place unless the Republicans capitulate and say to them, okay, we'll pay the money we've been paying for Obamacare for the next year, 2 years, 3 years.
No.
I know, but that's the only way they're going to avert a potential government shutdown. So, and there are some weak-kneed Republicans that I'll tell you right now would go along with that. And if they go along with that, then all we're going to do is kicking the can down the road. It's like Social Security. If you don't make changes, if you don't stop something, it's not going to end. It's going to just keep on happening.
Well, and one other thing, real quickly, that I want to look back at 2025 was the origination of the Barry Foster Show on the internet. And we'll do a retrospective on that a little bit later. But, John, you and I have had like 70 shows together. And
wow.
I want to tell you how much I appreciate you being on and being doing the program with me. It's a great thing.
Well, it's been a lot of fun. And hopefully the people that listen gain something from what we have to say. We truly do, I think, try to investigate and analyze the information before we spit it out. But I think, hopefully they're getting some valuable information from us, and hopefully they appreciate, what we do to try and get the information out to them.
Well, I appreciate you doing your work with Dr. McCullough and with Victor Davis Hanson and Bongino and all the other podcasts that you watch and bringing that stuff forward. And in the upcoming year, one of my goals is to have some live programming in terms of being on the air live where people can call in just like the old days. And you and I did a couple of live shows last year in 2025, this year, and next year I want to do more live shows together. We're going to begin to get this, and I'll tell you the best thing that y'all can do for us is like, subscribe, and share. My goal for next year is to get to 10,000 subscribers. So
very good. That would be a good goal to reach. That's for sure. And I agree with you. I hope that we can, as some people on TV and that said over years, and I'd like to take the show on the road.
Yes.
Okay, and do some remotes from various venues or some kind of unusual happenings and so on. But be able to go there and speak. And do some interviewing of people, like we did a little bit of out at the Sea Service Museum with Fred Carino and those. And I think that kind of thing, it brings the audience a little different perspective on whatever the situation is at that point in time.
Yeah, if you have some opportunities, you can just drop us an email at thebarryfostershow@gmail.com. And next program, I think, John, we're going to look forward to 2026. We'll talk more about the government shutdown and some of the other things that are coming up. Okay.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
Thank you, John. John Larsen, yes, on the road up there in the great industrialized North. You've been listening to the Barry Foster Show, coming to you from the Ridge Floor Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. As always, if you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for the program, just put them in the comments below, or as we said, you can send us an email at thebarryfostershow@gmail.com. And the best thing you can do is please like, subscribe, and share. If you have friends who used to listen to us on the radio, let them know that you can hear us now on the internet. And I'll show you at some point, if you'd like me to, I'll do a little instructional on how you can put it on your phone. All you have to do is tap one little button and there, we'll have it right there for you, okay? If you'd like to sponsor the program, we can fix that up for you too. And we want to thank our main sponsor, our original sponsor, Ridge Floors, to provide the Ridge Floors Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park, which is Ridge Florist. If you need some stuff for the new year, it's easy to get. Just go down and see them right there at 111 Memorial Drive in Sebring. You can call them at 863-385-4477 or drop them a line or go to their webpage at ridgefloresofsebring.com. As we continue to look for truth, justice, and the American way, Barry Foster and John Larsen. We'll see you next time.